Sitting on the bed like he owns the place, he ordered her in a strict tone, making her gulp nervously. Lock the door. Eyes fixed on her. Vine immediately complied and locked the door with her trembling hands. However, she did not turn back as she was afraid to face him. She remained motionless, attempting to breathe normally, but clinched when she heard him. Come. His one word was enough to have her turn around and walk straight towards him, without thinking twice. She stood at a little distance from him and looked down while tightly clutching the fall of her nightgown. She waited for him to say something, but when he did not, she looked up. Her gaze got locked with him, but he quickly broke the eye contact and looked down again. Jungkook smirked slightly, finding her behavior amusing, so he thought to play with her a little more. Bring out the first aid box from the drawer. Vine obliged once more, like a good girl, and turned to do what he asked for, but upon returning back to face him, she was met with a shock that turned her cheeks red. He was sitting shirtless on the bed, spreading his welcoming thighs on the display. Vine avoided meeting his gaze this time, and forwarded the box for him to hold while looking down. Come forward, ordered in a stern tone. She took few baby steps, stood a little closer and extended the box again. But a loud gasp left her mouth when he held her wrist and pulled her towards him, making her directly land on his lap. Her one hand was resting on his bare chest, whereas he put his one muscled arm around her waist tightly, restricting her movements, which could possibly take her away from him. Vine was lost, shockingly staring at his face, with her eyes wide, as her lips parted a little in surprise. She came back to the reality when he withdrew the first aid box from her grasp. Upon coming back to the earth, she removed her hand off his chest and tried to stand up right away, but he tightened his hold around her and shot her a glare, which was enough for her to stop and obey like a good kitten. Here, placed the box on the bed and opened it with one hand. Heal me. Intensely stared at her. Hearing those words, Vine noticed the gut-wrenching wounds on his body. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she clenched her jaws while pressing her lips to control the overwhelming emotions building inside her. Jungkook was observing her expressions continuously. She gulped down the painful lump before taking the medicine and cotton ball from the box. After looking at his wounds, she forgot about the position she was sitting in. She cleaned the wounds on his well-built chest and six-pack stomach. He closed his eyes, threw his head back, and pressed his lips to suppress the that was about to escape his lips due to her touch. Unaware of her impact on him, she did her work in the most gentle way, afraid to hurt him again. Jungkook's POV. No, this is not good for your heart, Jungkook. What if she is just feeling sympathy for you? Nothing else. What if she is feeling forced again? Unintentionally, I was staring at her. She shifted in her place uncomfortably, convincing me that my suspicions were valid. She is feeling forced indeed. I pulled her a little closer by grabbing the back of her head. Her eyes widened and lips trembled as our breaths played with each other. I drew her more closer to close the remaining gap between us, and she did not stop me. Instead, she shut her eyes tightly, probably to get rid of my sight. I let out a mournful chuckle, instantly left her head, and leaned back. She blinked her eyes open and tilted her head in confusion while staring at me with her tempting eyes, asking thousands of questions without uttering any word from her mouth. force yourself. Sadness was dripping from his tone. Her brows furrowed in confusion, but she didn't say anything, and here I am, dying to hear her voice for once. You really hate me, don't you? Stared at her helplessly. Looked at him in shock, trying to process his words. No? Who said this? I can see. Sadly smiled. I don't think so. Mumbled in a low tone, but he heard it. I tucked one of her hair strands behind her ear, and she flinched. I proved my point. She hates me and my touch. She bit her bottom lip and averted her gaze from mine. Never mind. Looked to the side, trying to control his emotions. I lifted her up by her waist and made her sit on the bed. I turned around, but she stopped me by saying, "Why do something? This man is overthinking and you are making his assumptions come true just because you're nervous." He placed me on the bed like I weighed nothing. The amount of disrespect he showed to the Luna. You just wait, Jeon. My turn. He turned around and raised his brow. I have wants too. Gave him a tight smile. Grabbed the first aid box, held her hand and placed it on her head. Here you go. Cold. Huh? I treated his wounds and he is doing this to me. He was about to turn around but I spoke again. Okay then. Sighed and stood up. Where can I find Zinova? Faced her completely and frowned. Why? I've heard he's good at treating wounds. Blinked her eyes rapidly. Yes, Jeon, that's what you get for being a coolie. However, a shriek escaped from my mouth when he pushed me on the bed and hovered over me. Hot. In rage, he began unraveling my clothes while gritting his teeth. He exposed my shoulders and began applying medicine to the bruises on my neck and shoulders. I did not stop him, indeed stared at him while smiling. Even in his anger, he is treating me like a flower, not hurting me. I extended my hand and pushed his ears to the side, more like playing with me. His attention switched from my bruises to my face. There was silence for a few minutes until he broke it. Don't. Hold on. Drew her hand back and raised her brow and whispered, Don't play with me. You'll end up blaming me. I swallowed to suppress the pain and stared at him in guilt. He backed off after covering me again. I think I should leave him alone for now. He's too hurt to understand my feelings. I got out of the bed and was set to leave. Sleeping, still not wanting to let her go. I came to a halt and glanced at this bipolar werewolf. He's confused, pushing me away and still wanting to keep me close. I mean, you may sleep here if you want. Okay. Immediately went back to the bed, laid beside him while pulling up the blanket, ready to sleep. He stared at her excited figure for a couple of seconds, then shook his head and hesitantly laid beside her, facing the other way. He was about to close his eyes but opened them immediately when he felt her hugging his back. She was trying to be a big spring, despite being smaller than him. He felt a little spark of happiness in his heart, but did not cry. Insecure. Scott. Vine bolted and instantly sat up straight like a soldier on duty upon hearing Jeon. She looked around perplexed and hesitantly voiced out, Me? No, me. Bit his lips and shut his eyes tightly in embarrassment as he unintentionally asked her out. Oh, okay. Shrugs her shoulder and laid back her knee moving like nothing happened. Next day. Whole day went like that. He ignored her and she still sought to get his attention. Now she was getting frustrated. Right now, he was not at home and she was standing on the balcony waiting for him, trying to motivate herself to keep trying. Wine? I'll talk to him. He'll definitely listen to me. Trying to uplift Vine's mood. Vine just kept shedding tears without saying anything back to her. Vine shot up her head as she heard many people entering the palace. Her eyes widened as she recognized them. She dashed down the hall and stood in front of the June pack, ready to attack the intruders and protect her pack. But those intruders signaled the submission and bowed to her. She asked with a frown. What has brought you here? Oh Lord, I want to talk to my sister. Ethan is Vine's cousin. Cautious. What kind of talk? Peace. For both backs. Vine was about to reject his offer when Jungkook entered, followed by Jeon and his guards, and spoke. Of course. Shook hands with Ethan. Let's go. Vine silently observed the situation. Let's go, Luna. Held Vine's hand and went towards the living room. Everyone sat down and Jungkook kept Vine close to himself, never leaving her hand. Vine was still attempting to make sense of the situation. Feel free to talk with your sister, Ethan. Rubbed Vine's hand to comfort her. Licked his lips before speaking as he was nervous. We are sorry, Vine. Apologize on the behalf of Wangs. Looked down, unable to meet her gaze. Why are you sorry? Except for Aunt, no one has treated you fairly. Nobody stood up for you. Nobody made you feel as if you belong to us. I'm sorry. Ethan was a good cousin. He never hurt Vine. But he, like everyone else, had no interest in her existence. That's because I belong to Jeon. It's okay, Ethan. No need to apologize. Smiled sadly. Jungkook squeezed Vine's hand, feeling her pain. You won over Jeon, unknowingly saving the Wangs from a ruthless alpha. You are the next successor, Vine. We want you to take over the Wangs back. Everyone in the room was taken aback upon hearing Ethan. Vine glanced at Jackie. But she's our Luna, and no matter what, we can't let her go, possessively stated. Everyone from the Junes agreed, but Ethan spoke. Then what will happen to Wangs? Worried. Vine's mother, she will be a perfect Luna. He was still unaware of her departure. Huh? Confused. But she died. Don't you know? Doyen and Liam, her. She ran away and went to Vine. She was with Vine during her last time. Gulps. Jungkook looked at Vine in pure shock and noticed her trying to gulp down her tears while biting her cheeks and tightening her jaws. Watching her struggling to stay strong, he felt a sudden wave of pain breaking his heart, tearing his soul. Ethan, I announce you as the next alpha. I'm trusting you with this pack. I hope you won't make me regret. She stunned everyone once more. She gave up her position as a ruler to be with Jungkook and among the Jones. It was hard to convince Ethan, but he eventually agreed at the end. Wan asked him to take Wangs away from Jones, so that they would not face any inconvenience in the future, and everyone agreed. At night, Jungkook's POV. She was standing facing the window, staring at the moon. I feel so bad. I know how it feels to have your loved one snatched away from you. She was already dealing with the loss of her mother, and my cold jerk behavior added fuel to the fire. I took a deep breath in and stood right behind her. I hesitantly hugged her from behind, and she did not push me away or react. I buried my face in her neck and exhaled a deep breath of relaxation. Feeling of pure bliss washed over me as I inhaled her scent. I want to talk to her, comfort her, love her till the very end, even if she does not allow me. In front of her, I want to give up my ego and dignity. Why didn't you told me about her? Softly spoke in her ear, still hugging her. Sighs. I'm not strong enough to narrate how she took her last breath in my embrace, fought back her tears. You fought all along. Why? Don't you believe that I can be there for you at your darkest hour? Don't you know I exist for you? Softly gripped her shoulders and turned her to face him. I have hurt you now. Finally, one by one, tears streamed from her eyes. Wiped her tears and shook his hand. Not your fault. Yes, it was. Nodded her head while breaking down completely. Don't blame my Luna. Patted her head lovingly and hugged her while stroking her back. After a few minutes, when she calmed a little, he spoke. No more tears, love. Sighs deeply. Tell me honestly, do you love me or is it sympathy? Asked insecurely. She broke the hug and glared at him coldly, making him swallow and imagine the worst case scenario. Suddenly, she cupped his cheeks and put her rosy petals on his. She him possessively and spoke after pulling him. Does this look like sympathy to you? Still cupping his cheeks. Huh? Man was traumatized. Thanks again. Got your answer? Came back to the reality. I am a little sluggish in grasping these concepts. Please me once again to make sure I understand. A sly grin danced over his lips. He smacked his chest playfully and blushed profusely. Shameless. Pinned her to the wall and caged her between his arms. Now you are blaming an innocent man, dove. His warm breath fanned her lips. Innocent and you, dramatically gasped. Then what is this behavior, sir? Pointed towards their position. I'm just taking the blame and making sure your assumptions come true. Is it wrong, princess? Not at all, shook her head. They both chuckled and he leaned in closer. But he came to a halt and looked her in the eyes, asking for her permission. She closed her eyes, allowing him, and he kind of jumped on her, unleashing his inner beast. After a long session of They laid on the bed and cuddled. How much you love Jungkook? Asked as she snuggled more into him, feeling warmth and comfort. But before JK could answer, this jerk ruined my life for you. That's much he loves you. He even cried like a heartbroken teenage baby girl, rant out his pent-up frustration. Vine looked at JK as his cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She burst out a hysterical laugh. Don't laugh like you are any different from him. Should I expose your only side in front of him? Like how you roll over him? Taunted Vine. This time it was Jungkook who laughed his off, and Vine's face turned bright red. For a long time, Ian and Cora kept exposing Vine and Jungkook's secret, making them unable to breathe due to humiliation and laughter. Baby Highness, are you ready to be with me until the very end? Raises her cheeks while hugging her close. 1,000 times yes. Smiles brightly. I swear to love and cherish you no matter what. Even if the world crumbles around me, even in my darkest hour. I promise to love you endlessly, desperately, obsessively, possessively, forever. Her passionately, she returned gladly. Say it back, frowns and pouts. It back, laughs. That's not fair. Cutely glared at her. Okay, sorry, I'll say it. Waiting. Are you ready? Of course, love. Excited. Make me say it if you can. Laughs again. Hovers over her. Now you're asking for punishment. Voice went deep and dark. Gulps. Am I? JK just went straight for another session, taking her breaths up. Pulls away and panics. Okay, I love you a lot. Laughed at the end, but still felt nervous and scared. Too late, honey. Dangerously smiled. Saying this, he pulled up the blanket over their bodies and continued.